Calathea is one of the most beautiful plant species. However, they can also be a pain in the butt. If you have had Calathea, you know that they can be quite finicky, but not all Calatheas are created equal. Some are definitely easier than others, and today I want to go through 20 different types of Calatheas I have had experience with and go through like specific care for each one of them and also rank them in terms of their difficulty. Hi, this is Jira from Plant Corner, and I've mentioned this before, but I used to be a serial plant killer, and Calathea is definitely one of the victims. When I first started collecting plants, Calatheas was one of the plants that I just couldn't resist having, and I think I have over 15 species that I mass murdered them brutally. But now that I've learned more about them, I've killed Calathea, and every time I kill them, I also learn how to take better care of them, which is something I'm going to share throughout this video, or which one is easier or harder than others. I will rate them in a scale from 1 to 5, from 1 being really unforgiving to 5 being more forgiving or relatively forgiving in terms of Calatheas. The first Calathea is Calathea Beauty Star, and they have the pattern similar to Calathea Pinstripe or Calathea Ornata, but the leaves are slightly thicker, and I think that's the reason why it's slightly easier compared to Calathea Ornata. Usually I give Calathea plenty of indirect light, and I know that this is a low light plants when they're grown in their nature habitat, which is on the forest floor. In an apartment, the light has been blocked by walls and also ceiling, so I would say give them plenty of light, just not direct sunlight. For Calathea Beauty Star, I would probably give them a 4 out of 5. Since they are not super duper hard to care for, the leaves are not very fragile, and I think they didn't give me as much of an issue until I over fertilized them. Next Calathea is Calathea Dotty, and this one has such cute leaves. The leaves are round with dark, almost black in color and pink pattern. Calathea Dotty, I don't think it gives me a hard time either, only when the humidity level goes below 30 or when it gets too little light. I know they're happier when the humidity level is around 60%. However, I have had them in around like 30 to 40% and never let them dry out, and they are doing just fine. So for Calathea Dotty, I would give them a 4 out of 5 as well. Next, I have Calathea Freddy, and they are really cute and quite easygoing as well, as long as you keep the humidity level above 40 to 50%. And make sure that the soil gets to dry out about halfway through before you water, but never dry out completely. For Calathea Freddy, indirect light will work just fine, and don't forget to aerate the soil before you water. For Calathea Freddy, I think I would give them a 4 out of 5 as well. Next is Calathea lancifolia or Calathea rattlesnake. This is one of the more easygoing Calatheas for sure, because when I mass murdered my Calathea collection, Calathea rattlesnake or lancifolia was one of the 2 that survived that mass destruction. I think Calathea lancifolia is really good at like tolerating lower light condition as well. I think I have to give this one a 5 out of 5 because in relation to all other Calatheas, this is one of the easier Calathea for sure. Next is Calathea leopardina, and this one is just like an older sister of Calathea Freddy. It has just slightly thinner leaves and longer stem, and I think that's the reason why they can get pest a little easier, because the leaves are softer and there's more room on the stem for mealybugs to hatch to get on. So for Calathea leopardina, even though generally if you give them all the right conditions like humidity, light, water, and clean up leaves often, they shouldn't give you much of a problem. I have to give this one a 3 out of 5 because it's not as forgiving if you forget to water, and also it can get past a little easier. Next is Calathea mosaica or Calathea network. The leaves are just so beautiful, like in a subtle way, because of this intricate pattern on the leaves, and I don't think it gave me much of an issue either. it was quite forgiving because sometimes I forget to water this plant and it will look a little droopy, but when I water, it can still perk back up. It can tolerate drought to a certain level, and I think because the leaves are slightly thicker than our other Calatheas. I have also successfully grown this Calathea in humidity level at around 30 to 40%. They don't require higher humidity level either, and for that reason, I'm gonna give Calathea Network 5 out of 5. Next, Calathea orbifolia. This is one of my favorite Calatheas, and we used to have a really big one that I already sold because they have outgrown the space, but I used to have this really big and beautiful Calathea. The leaves are just stunning, but one thing I learned about Calathea orbifolia is that light is very important to them. So I have had one like about 12 feet away from floor through east facing window, and that's not enough light for them because I can see that they're declining. They get like brown tips, they get like crispy edges, and when I move them to the patio where they get indirect light all day, they grow much faster and I don't really see the damage on the leaves, even though the patio doesn't have consistent humidity level. So I would say like what's more important for Calathea orbifolia is that you give them plenty of light and never let the soil dry out. That should give you a better result than trying to keep it in a humid space but doesn't get enough light. Calathea orbifolia, I would say it is not super finicky, but also like they can get pests somewhat easily, and they can also get brown tips easily as well if you don't give them enough light. So I would give Calathea orbifolia 3 out of 5. Next is Calathea ornata or pinstripe Calathea. This is one of the most popular plants. Every time we get them in, new plant parents would grab them and come to the counter, and I will have to warn them that I have personally killed these plants 5 times before I could figure what's going on with them. This is one of the least forgiving Calatheas that I have ever dealt with, and sometimes it would be doing fine for like a month or two and then suddenly declining out of nowhere. It gets mites easily. It's not very forgiving when it comes to humidity, light, or watering. And for that reason, I have to give this Calathea ornata 1 out of 5. Next, we have Calathea makoyana or Calathea peacock. And this is definitely one of the easier Calathea to take care of because again, when I mass murdered my Calathea collection, the 2 survivors were Calathea lancifolia that I mentioned earlier and this Calathea makoyana. As long as you give them plenty of light, humidity level above 30%, and water when the soil is about halfway dry, you shouldn't have a problem keeping them alive and happy. So if you get like crispy tips, I would look into like, is this plant in front of a heater, or is my room like the room is too dry and it goes below 30%. So definitely get a hygrometer so it can tell you exactly what the humidity level in your room is, so you don't make a mistake and then kill a Calathea. Calathea makoyana, I would say I have to give them 5 out of 5 as well because they are just so much more forgiving than other Calatheas, and they're also not very needy. Calathea Maui Queen might not be the most flashy Calathea, but I think the pattern is very subtle and very elegant. I have seen a blogger or a YouTuber with a really big one before and it looks absolutely stunning. However, I had such a difficult time taking care of them because they can get spider mites quite easily. They're not very forgiving when it comes to humidity level. So if the humidity level goes below 40, they start to crisp up. They are also not very forgiving when it comes to water. They also didn't make it when I mass murdered my Calathea collection due to over fertilization. So I have to give her a 2 out of 5. Next is Calathea medallion, and I really like her. She's bold, she's beautiful, and I've seen influencers having a big tub of her that's bigger than themselves, and I just thought, wow, like this is a dream. However, my dream didn't come into fruition. I think this is one of the trickier Calatheas to have because they get brown tips quite easily. They're also very susceptible to pests like spider mites. especially if you're willing to wipe their leaves more often and you have humidity level above 40 to 50% and you have plenty of light. I think you will make it work. For Calathea medallion, I'm gonna give her 4 out of 5. Calathea rosy is quite popular in our store because the leaves are just so pink, and the one that we have with more light in the store becomes even like almost like magenta pink, and it's really pretty. So for Calathea rosy, I have now figured her out that she does need a little more light than other Calatheas in order for her color to shine through. I don't think I have much trouble with her, and I don't really see pests and stuff on her either. So for that reason, I'm gonna give her a 4 out of 5. Next is Calathea rufibarba, and it's a velvet leaf Calathea. Now, I don't really like velvet leaf Calathea because they get susceptible to mold and fungal infection if you had to spray the leaves with insecticide or some type of water. You also don't want to put them close to your humidifier because if there's like droplets of water that got stuck on the leaves, it could also become an infection as well. For any velvet leaves Calathea, you have to make sure that your room has some type of airflows, whether from opening the window or a fan. And what I would do, instead of spraying the leaves, I would take it to the shower and rinse the leaves off. That way any pests that could be on the leaf can come off as well, and then let it air dry. Make sure you have a fan that you could use in order to help the leaves dry out a little faster. For this Calathea, I would say it can tolerate less light than others, but because of the velvet leaf and the issues that I've mentioned, I'm gonna give her a 3 out of 5. Calathea setosa. This is actually one of my favorite Calatheas to care for. It is very easygoing, very forgiving. It has beautiful grayish leaf with dark green pattern. I have had it in like almost low light, medium light, plenty of indirect light, and they have been doing amazingly in all of them. I have also forgot to water her before, but she handled it like a champ. So the only issue you have to be mindful for this guy is just pest. And to be honest, compared to all the other Calatheas, this one also didn't give me much of an issue with pests either. So aside from Calathea lancifolia and Markoyana, Calathea Grey Star or Setosa would probably be another one that I could give 5 out of 5 in terms of like it being forgiving and easier to care for. So definitely recommend if you're just getting started with Calatheas. Next, we have Calathea Stella, which looks just like Calathea White Fusion. The differences is that the Calathea Stella has the green around the edges and has bigger leaves than Calathea White Fusion. So in my experience, they didn't give much of an issue as long as you provide plenty of light. So any Calathea with sectorial white variegation like this or Calathea White Fusion will need plenty of light because the white area will not produce food. So you want to make sure that it gets more light than regular Calathea. But not too much to the point where it will burn the leaves. So in the middle of the summer, I wouldn't put it right next to the window, but I would say the rest of the year it should be okay on the windowsill. Calathea Stella, I think it doesn't deal with underwatering very well. Light, water, humidity as well. So the leaves are just so thin that if the room is too dry or if it's in front of a heater, it can burn or crisp up or dry out really easily. So for Calathea Stella, I'm gonna give her a 3 out of 5. Next, we have Calathea varsevexii, which is another type of velvet leaves Calathea, but I think this one is less velvety compared to the rufibarba and therefore a little easier to deal with. I have had this one close to my east facing window but under shelf, so it doesn't get full sun, but it has been doing really well. It can take light from bright indirect light to medium light, and I wouldn't go to like low light. Also for velvet leaf Calathea, again, my recommendation is to make sure you have an airflow in your room to prevent droplets of water on their leaves for a prolonged period of time. You also want to Make sure the soil never dry out completely. But other than that, I don't think this one get pests as easily as others, and I've never really had issues, so I'm gonna give her a 4 out of 5. Calathea White Fusion, just like Calathea Stella, with the white sectorial variegation, you want to make sure that she gets plenty of light and she never run out of water. To water Calathea, I usually wait until the topsoil is dry and then I water just until the top is moist, and now you have an evenly moist pot. Another thing to be careful about Calathea White Fusion is pest issue, because sometimes spider mites can gather in the middle of the leaves, and because the leaves has parts that are white, it's really hard to notice in the beginning. So if you do have Calathea White Fusion, I recommend spraying them with insecticide, neem oil, peppermint oil, or whatever you're using, and make sure that it gets plenty of light and humidity level is over 40% as well. Calathea White Star is such a beautiful species with like the hint of pink in the middle of the leaves, and I feel like it's a princess of Calatheas. However, I really had a hard time with it. I killed 4 or 5 of them. Honestly, I don't know if I figure her out just yet. I've never had her for a long period of time without killing her in the end. The thing is, I have tried a lot of light and not a lot of light with this guy. They didn't like it, so just somewhere in the middle. Never let her dry out completely. Water when the soil is about halfway dry. So she's never really happy with me. So for that reason, I'm gonna give her a 1 out of 5. Sorry. Next, we have Calathea vittata, and I know the leaves look almost like Calathea White Star, but the form is much shorter, much more compact, bushier, and a lot hardier in my opinion. This is one of the very first Calatheas that I've had, and I kept her alive for a really long time before I mass murdered her with my Calathea collection. However, I noticed that they are like, they're not very easily infested by pests. They are quite easygoing as long as you don't let the soil dry out completely, and as long as your humidity level doesn't go below 30%. She can be happy in a medium to bright indirect light. I would say this is one of a very good Calatheas for beginner as well, and I would give her a 4 out of 5. Last but not least, we have Calathea Sabrina. She is another almost like velvety leaves Calathea. She didn't really give me a hard time. She's like one of the middle child, really nice girl. It's not extreme one way or another. So for that reason, I'm gonna give her a 4 out of 5. So in summary, if you're getting into Calatheas, I will start off with Macroyana lancifolia vittata or Musaica. And then if you feel a little more confident, you can step into a harder or a less forgiving species. But remember, if you kill a Calathea, it's probably not your fault. I hope you have a good one. Bye!